will appear and is live streaming to us from Hanoi in Vietnam. And Chris,
Hello, can you hear me?
we can.
Oh, awesome. And you can see me on the big screen. It's really freaky. I can see myself on the big screen too. I am going to attempt to share my screen, so please, dear God, let this work. Uh, okay, how's that looking? Can you still hear me?
Yes, Chris, we can hear you and we
Oh,
can hear
good,
your
good, good.
screen.
Sorry,
Yeah,
my apologies for that.
that's right. We've got you.
Hopefully that's all coming up in full screen for you as well. And good morning, or actually good afternoon to you all, and thank you, Jenny, for the kind introduction and inviting myself. I also have my colleague, Mr. Zung, online as well. He's our BDM based here in Hanoi in the embassy with me. So I'm the Trade and Investment Commissioner with Austrade. Many of you may have some interaction with Austrade in the past. But we are the Australian federal government's trade and investment promotion and facilitation agency. So we're really charged with assisting exporters to send their goods across the world. And if you haven't had any interaction with us, I hope you do in the future. And we have 70 odd offices in 50 countries across the world. So we're actually here to help you no matter which market you're going into. That's me. Looking pretty young and fit there. I don't think I'm closer to my 40th birthday than what I am now. But what I want to talk to you today is about the Vietnam market overall, and then we're going to look at agri-food in a little bit more detail, and then specifically we're going to talk about the blueberry sector, which we're really personally, as a blueberry lover, I'm hoping they're up here soon because I'm sick of seeing all the Kiwi and US blueberries and wishing ours were here as well. Um, Vietnam has about 100 million people. What we estimate, though, is probably 13 million of those are the middle class and above, and that's those who can afford to buy Australian products, and that's really who we target with our premium food and beverage up here in market. What you'll see is Vietnam's quite a long, skinny country. The two biggest cities, Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, have about 25 million people. And so what that means is 75 million are living in the provinces. And really, that's also an area we're trying to tap into as well. Vietnam is a single party state, so it's actually quite a stable single party communist government up here. It's a little bit different from some of the other communist governments you may have known in the world, where Vietnam has sort of a four-headed monster if you want. They have a general secretary, a president, a prime minister, and a national party leader. And each four of those leaders have sort of separate roles and responsibilities. So it's very difficult for Vietnam to sort of turn into an autocracy like you see in some other markets. Not saying it's impossible, but it's certainly more difficult. Vietnam has really been the growth story of the global economy in the past few years. No country has benefited more from a China plus one policy than Vietnam. What we saw earlier during COVID and pre-COVID with some of the trade wars that Trump initiated in his first term was a lot of businesses moving their manufacturing from China into Vietnam. And also we saw a lot more Western investment coming in to Vietnam. So the likes of Intel and Google, Samsung, Apple, all making their products here now, and even my favorite toy Lego have also opened a factory here in Vietnam. Now, what this really means is that Vietnam, the economy is actually creating a lot more higher paid jobs. And we know that with increased disposable income, consumers generally buy better quality food, better quality water, better quality education. So they're three things that Australia does really, really well and is really well set up to sort of take advantage of that emerging middle class. I mentioned before the 13 million of what we target as our target customers. The important thing to note with that emerging middle class and with that investment that's coming into the market is that 13 million should triple to about 36 million by 2030. So this is really a market that you want to come into soon and hopefully have market access for blueberries soon. But you want to be able to really build those relationships because Southeast Asia is a relationship driven market and Vietnam is certainly no exception to that. So if you're coming to the market instead of 2028, 2027, you possibly miss that wave of, coming in as an emerging market, and some of those initial, relationships may well be taken. I'll say one other point just about the Australia-Vietnam relationship. We have a terrific relationship with Vietnam. In 2023, Australia celebrated 50 years of diplomatic relations with Vietnam. Education has been the cornerstone of our relationship. I'm really proud as an Australian to always mention in any presentation I give in Vietnam that Australia was the first country to grant citizenship, sorry, not citizenship, scholarships, grant scholarships to students after unification of Vietnam in 1973. And we know in the cities of Melbourne and Sydney and other capitals around Australia that Vietnamese population and community that's so well connected from education is a thriving part of our community. And as a result, we've got some great 50 years of bilateral people-to-people relationships as well. Last year in 2024, we raised our partnership by way of two countries to comprehensive strategic partnership. What this means is it's really diplomatic speak for best friends. But what it means is when you have a central government like in Vietnam and the government are involved in every single activity in the market, if that government is saying Australia is trusted, Australia is reliable, Australia is a friend, that key messaging that's in the media, that's in all the publications, that's in all the presentations, filters down to all levels of business and importantly consumers. So whilst we have a great name already on our premium products from our food and beverage, we now have key government messages coming from the Vietnam government, coming from Vietnam businesses, that we're a trusted partner. Now, only 7 other countries have that comprehensive strategic partnership. And it's a really, really important document. It's worth its weight in gold, to be honest, in terms of what sort of credibility we're able to achieve as a country in market. I'll just touch on a few sort of trends by way of consumer, and I think these are no different from a lot of other emerging markets, but that premiumization is true. That is really linked to that emerging middle class and seeking better quality food, better for you food. It's important to note too that Vietnam is an agricultural powerhouse, much the same as Australia. So there's a lot of fruit grown here. The mangoes and avocados, etc., are just terrific, really high quality. Vietnam's the second biggest coffee producer, makes a lot of cashews, rice. So there's a lot of domestic production, but for our products to come in, particularly in a horticulture sense, and really take some market share from domestic as well as some other international providers, is a real tribute to the fact that consumers are actively making better quality choices and they recognise the premium quality call-outs that we have on our Australian horticulture as well. So that health awareness is real, and that's obviously flown on from COVID as well, but certainly as consumers have access to more money and are making those choices at the checkout as well. Talk a little bit more about agribusiness and food. So we have seen this relationship go from strength to strength by way of a sector in the past few years. Traditionally, it's been on grains and wheat, barley, typically coming up to market. There's a very big baking sector here and food manufacturing sector in Vietnam, but also it's a beer market. So Australian malted barley is well consumed by the beer manufacturers and brewers up here in market. More recently, we've seen Australian cotton do particularly well. It's become an over $2 billion export for us in the past few years, largely on the back of a bumper crop in 2023. But Australian cotton is again recognised by the manufacturers who have facilities up here. Nike, Tommy Hilfiger, Polo Ralph Lauren all have factories in the central part of Vietnam. And when we've taken Cotton Australia as an example, the reception we received there is of the highest order. Red meat is a particular standout, I think, by way of other products. Our red meat is not cheap in market. You're buying about a 200-gram steak at a restaurant here in Hanoi, and you're paying about 100 Aussie dollars. Now, it's not just expats who are buying that. When I look at those steakhouses, they're actually full of local Vietnamese high net wealth individuals that recognise the iron and other nutrients and vitamins that come from Australian red meat and are actively buying some of the most expensive meals in market. And I think what we're seeing there is that flow on to some other products that have also done particularly well. So by looking at fresh fruit, oranges, mandarins have done really well in market. Citrus Australia have done a great job in the marketing and presentation up here. Table grapes has been another success story for Australia, and of course cherries. We know any market where there's a Lunar New Year, the cherry season aligns so well, and the gifting product of cherries at that time of year has been exceptionally well received by consumers. Last year we had nectarines and peaches coming to market. That's been a slightly slower growth and development. There's a lot more education that needs to occur about those two products. They're not completely fully understood. But we've seen Australian plums come in this year, and it's been their first year. And they've actually taken quite well to market. There's 3 different varieties of plums that are in now. And some are sweet, some are a bit more sour, some are crunchy, some are soft. And there's a certain variety there that I think aligns really well with the Vietnam palate and what they're used to with the Vietnamese plum as well. And again, they're not a cheap product, but we're seeing some really good interest with that product being purchased by the consumers as well. I'll just go to our next. I will point out that there's no vegetable access for Australian products into market. Currently, we only have those 6 fruits that are available, and there's also some wild game products like kangaroo, etc., that we can't buy and market up here. But overall, our market access for Vietnam is actually quite good, and we're benefiting from 3 free trade agreements that allow us to have 0 tariff on most of our products, except for wine, however, which currently attracts a 20% tariff when it comes into market. I mentioned some of that premiumization that is occurring. That's across the board. I'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges. We have seen growth in Vietnam. Consumers have returned quite comfortably to purchasing high-end products. However, last year, no different from a lot of other markets where there was a bit of a slowdown in confidence and a decrease in that confidence linked to higher inflation. That was real here in Vietnam. So some of the growth last year didn't hit the numbers we expected. It still, as a country, grew at 7% GDP. And most Western governments would have loved that 7%, but there was certainly an expectation of being high 8s here. Vietnam is on track to return to 8% and above GDP growth. So I think that sort of consumer confidence is shifting slightly. The inflation seems to be fairly under control here. We've seen good growth in tourism as well, which drives a lot of demand for high-end products from Australia. Vietnam last year received about 20 million tourists to the country. So it's certainly a country that is well on everyone's minds as well for visitation as well. There are some issues that we see around the import regulation, and even we saw this with the plums that were recently allowed into market access, and certainly the size and some confusion around the different size of tubs and packaging that they were allowed into. We were able to work through that with DAF to make sure that could occur, but certainly delayed the importation at the start. The other aspect we see need for improvement and can be a challenge is cold chain, and the cold storage solutions aren't really what we would say adequate once you do leave some of those big cities. Certainly we have more direct flights between Australia and Vietnam now, and we're seeing increased flights between Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City and the main capital cities of Australia. But once those products look to leave those major metropolitan areas, the cold chain solution can fall away a little bit. And certainly we'd love to see some more investment by logistics companies as well as the government to try and help support that and get our premium product to more of those provincial consumers. I think really what we're doing up here as Austrade is really trying to continue to build our network, create events. We do the Taste of Australia retail campaigns. We do the Taste of Australia big barbecue by way of highlighting our impact here in market. But we're also looking at what can we do by way of missions and delegations and supporting industry bodies, but also different businesses when you do come up to market as well, and really putting on a one-to-one matching service for those that can come up to market and put in front of the right buyers for you. Just talking specifically now about horticulture, they're the numbers on the slide there for those commodities that I mentioned do have market access. I think it's important to note that some of the numbers are a little lower than they may have been the previous year. I think that's linked to some of the agricultural conditions that we had in Australia, but also some of that consumer confidence that it's slightly decreased last year. Now, we expect these numbers to be either steady or potentially increasing again this year. And as I said, plums had their first season of market access to market, and I think the reception that they've received from consumers has actually been really, really positive. So we're looking forward to seeing them for a few more seasons up here. Uh, I've covered off a little bit of those opportunities and challenges, so I probably won't go on to them a little bit more, but certainly we can share these slides with Jenny and the team at Berries Australia, and they can pass them on to you. What I would say though is we looked at the blueberry market overall. As I said, New Zealand and US have got their products in here in market. What we're seeing is the US product taking market share off New Zealand year by year. Whilst last year the tonnage was down overall, what we saw was the overall value was still actually increasing. So what it's showing is that the market's prepared to pay a premium for those two countries' blueberries, and that they're actually being really well received in market. And despite lower tonnages, the pricing they're actually receiving is significantly or is increasing over the year as well. As I said, we're really hoping that we can have blueberries up in market. We've been trying to do our job behind the scene, working with DAF and Berries Australia to try and sort of help facilitate that. But we certainly would welcome any questions if there's time at the moment for that. I don't know how that sits in with your agenda, Jenny, but I'm happy to maybe stop sharing, and if there's any questions, happy to answer those. I can't hear anything you're saying, Jenny.
Not on? Oh, on now?
Oh, yes, I can hear you.
We're
Thank
back,
you.
Chris. Thank you for your presentation. Would anyone like to ask Chris any questions, James? I'll repeat it for you.
Thank you.
Chris, can you talk us through the market composition between retail, food service, wet markets? What's sort of the distribution of fresh food into each of those channels, and where do you see the opportunities?
Yeah, sure. So definitely the wet market still here, still really prevalent in market. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Generally is the faster moving, I guess products go into there and they move out that day, and consumers generally here buy smaller quantities. It's not like the Coles and Woolies sort of shop where you have the big supermarket trolleys going through, like a lot of other Southeast Asian markets are similar, whereby mum or dad will just pop down and get what they need from that wet market. But generally speaking, the high end consumers aren't shopping at the wet market. We're seeing the retail development here quite significant. So Lotte and Eon have about 14 or 15 stores up here with their sort of hypermarket. Mega Market, which is the old it's a bit like Costco, but without the membership, and it's the old Metro stores here. There's about 14 or 15 of them in market as well. They're very popular for not just consumers who want to buy in bulk or bigger options, but also a lot of small businesses and mid-sized businesses will go to Mega Market and buy their meat or horticulture or products for their business from there. Other premium retailers, so we see Unarmed Gourmet, Numam, and there's a few other sort of boutique fruit shops in town, like Clever Fruit, Tony Fruit, and these little fruit shops are doing particularly well. They're quite small, but focus heavily on premium customers and have the packaged product all ready to go. And you can go online and buy it, and they deliver it to your door on the back of a bike. And they're actually really taking off in the horticulture space, and particularly with gifting. And they're really well presented. So that sort of niche retail in horticulture is a particularly good area that's largely fueled by distributors in market. They're typically not buying direct from exporters, where you'll see Eon, Lotte, and Unarmed will buy direct at times. The other big retailer to mention up here is Winmart. So that's the biggest retailer in market. They've got about 3,500 stores up here. About 3,000 of those are the Winmart Plus, which is their convenience sort of store, the 7-Eleven type store. But we've done some good work with Winmart in the past. They've bought direct from cherry producers in the season that's just gone, and distributed them through their stores where they see the highest traffic for cherries. Food service for horticulture is probably a more growing sector, to be perfectly honest. I think a lot of the local produce is still consumed there. That said, the red meat and seafood from Australia does particularly well in food service, and we do see some, like the cherries at Christmas and New Year from Australia being promoted by food service, by hotels and hospitality at their venues as well. But typically, I guess our other products, the citrus and table grapes do have a bit more competition from either local or lower cost providers that might be coming from Thailand or other markets as well. So I think by way of a market, it's definitely a focus more on retail. I think working with a distributor that can help you get into those, niche and specialty fruit retailers, but then also a presentation at the bigger retailers will be the best bet going forward. So Jenny, I hope that answered the question.
That's great. Thank you, Chris. In the interest of time, I might thank you for your presentation and we will move on to our next speaker. But if anyone would like to be connected to Chris, I'm more than happy to do that for you. So come and find me at the end and I'll point people in your direction.
Thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful conference. And special thanks to my colleague Zung, who's on the call as well, for preparing their presentation. We look forward to seeing you up in market again, Jenny, and hopefully bring a few of the blueberries with you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris.
See you all.